Hi there guys, Alexander here again and welcome to another one. Today we're going to be talking about effective code reviews, and I'll try to demystify this subject in 5 to 10 minutes and share my personal insights and my experience into this past 10 or 15 years. I don't know why it just came to me that I should record a video about this today. I'm going to write an article as well on Programmer Network. So let's actually get started with this. Code reviews are basically the most integral part of any team, right? And how you do them might determine, is do they feel like a burden? Do they feel like a chore to the team members? Or does it feel something where you guys can collaborate, elaborate, and where you can actually, strengthen the bond between the team? So let's actually get into the presentation. I want to make this video pretty quick. So let's go to the next slide. So code reviews, myths versus reality. A lot of the times you must have felt in your career that the code review or the comments that somebody is leaving on your PR are there to actually just show how superior they are or how awesome developers they are, instead of actually trying to provide value. I think in reality, the reason why we should be doing PRs and why other developers should try to leave comments is not just to, let's say, trash your code or to make you change your code to the likings on their own, but to actually understand the code, learn the domain knowledge, which is one of the things that most developers lack when it comes to the specific industry where they work in. So if you're doing code reviews, if you're reviewing someone's code, instead of trying to show off how great you are, how awesome you are, instead of, trying to just leave a comment for the sole sake of, leaving it or showing your superiority, instead of that, try to learn from others, try to, learn the domain knowledge and try to understand the problem that person has been working on. So it's very imperative that we use code reviews for the sake of collaboration, knowledge sharing, understanding, versus, oh, I just have to leave the comment. It's almost like being seeking to find issues, right? All right, let's go to the next point. Setting up for code reviews. In order to do code reviews efficiently, you really have to set up your organization, your team, or the teams for it, right? So code reviews isn't just something that effectively works out of the box. For instance, a lot of the times when we discuss PRs or code reviews, right, we are talking about the style, about the formatting, about which keyword to use, etc., etc. You have to isolate this. One of the most important things in code reviews is that your continuous integration server, your tooling on your local computer is actually set up so all of these things are actually a side effect. They're removed from the equation. So, for example, in the JavaScript world, or actually in the web development, we're using Husky, for example, as a pre-commit hook. So before you actually even commit your code, your local environment is running the linters, formatters, type checkers, whatever, before your code ends up somewhere. So in simple words, you want to completely remove this out of equation. PRs, or to say CRs, should not be about style, about formatting and stuff. This is something that has to be done locally, also on your continuous integration server, and then you can focus on actual functionality. So as you can see, first 2 points here are automate style and formatting, and CI for type checking and tests. So every single repository out there, open source, private repository, your company repositories, they have to have this. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to code reviews and setting your team up for effective code reviews is consensus on code principles. So code reviews will often, lead into some specific discussions about should I have used here let instead of const, whatever, and that's great. But you guys as a team, and each individual team has to agree on the code principles. How do you write your code? Do you, use X or Y or Z? And then once you agree on that, you have to document it. As you can see here, I've written here at the bottom, well-written documentation to reference in discussions. So when you get stuck into some discussion why somebody did something, having some documentation where you agree, okay, how do we write tests? How do we write, functions? How do we write modules? How do we write classes? So for example, in a JavaScript world, it's a good thing is like, how do we write our utility functions? Do we write them using a class keyword? Do we just export some function that returns some objects? So there's so many of these things that you can actually agree on document them, and then if you ever get into a discussion during a code review session is like, why is this done like this? You can always reference to that document, and that's where the discussion stops. You save a lot of time and effort and energy into discussing things that you already agreed on, right? PRs should focus on functionality, not style. As I said, it's really the main benefit of doing code reviews is to find potential additional bugs, or to say regressions, to understand the functionality, to understand the feature that your colleague is doing. So try to be a person that actually focuses on the value of the feature. Does the feature that your colleague is implementing is actually working as it should, versus just trying to find some of the tiny things. Those tiny things, of course, they're important and you should not neglect them completely, but your mental model about this should be, your whole perception towards code reviews should be, okay, now I have the actual ability to learn what my colleague is doing. So I can learn the code base, I can learn what they're doing and why, right? Many times in my career, and this happens almost every month, I catch myself discussing something, some PR, like in like, I don't know, tens of different comments. This is this drains a lot of energy from all the participants in that discussion. So if you find yourself discussing a PR on a GitHub comments for more than 5 messages, stop it, break out of that loop, go to your colleague. If you're working remotely, call your colleague and say, hey, let's jump on a call and let's discuss this. Genuinely, there is nothing worse than discussing a PR over GitHub comments for 2 hours. It doesn't increase productivity of the person doing the PR. It actually increases the separation of opinions, because you're clearly, if you're discussing something for an hour or 2, you're clearly either misunderstanding each other, or you are almost purposely disagreeing because one of you got triggered. So if you find yourself discussing things via text messages on GitHub, that's very ineffective. So that's not part of the effective code reviews. So if something requires discussion, stop it, go and sit together. We're going to get to that in the next slide. Sit together, have a call, and then discuss it. It also doesn't set up a good picture or image for other team members. Reading a lot of these discussions often feels wrong. It feels divisive. So try to not get yourself to those points, because you will also feel bad later on. You will waste a lot of time for almost no value. And generally, these discussions, even the super long ones, they're not valuable enough to spend 3 or 4 hours total, combined on discussing something trivial, right? Okay, great. Let's keep on going. Effective task breakdown. So one of the things we're going to talk in the next slides is that in order to do PRs properly, meaning setting up for code reviews, you need to be able as a software engineer to break your tasks down. We're going to talk about that in a moment, so let's move on. Hierarchy doesn't improve your points. So if you're a senior developer, if you're a tech lead, if you're a CTO, and you're discussing something in a code review session, just because you have a role doesn't mean you're right. This, as someone who is a tech lead myself, I'm talking to you tech leads out there, to you senior developers out there. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Just because you have a role doesn't mean that other people can't have a good point, a factual point. So try to build a culture in your company where such arbitrary things don't have any impact. And as I said, well-written documentation, which I already spoke about. So having a well-written documentation and some code principles that you agreed on is really great. It's great for onboarding people, but also it's great whenever you get lost in those endless discussions sometimes, you can always reference back to that document. All right, cool. Let's go. Let's move on. Code review methods. How can you do code reviews? A lot of people are stuck in leaving comments on GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever. That's probably today the most ineffective way, so it doesn't really fall under my own way of calling it effective CRs. What we do at the current company where I work, we use a lot of videos, so the person who is opening a pull request generally will explain what that pull request is doing, and then if you have a lot of comments on that, you can just respond with a video. At the company where I work now, but also for maybe 5 to 7 years, I've been using something called Screencastify, which is essentially a Chrome extension, video extension. You install an extension, you click record, it records your screen. It's free actually for recording up to 20 minutes, so essentially it's free forever for us for this purpose. And then you can click copy link, it generates a link, so it uploads the video to your Google Drive, and then you can paste that either on a GitHub comment, or if you're the person opening a PR, you can just add it in a PR description, and then somebody can watch it. We use this a lot for the front end. So for example, if a developer implements a UI feature that, some view that has various elements, it's very difficult to reason about this. It's very difficult to know if things are correct until you see them. So of course, a person or that person who is implementing that can push that to staging, which they should. This is another point that I have to make, that whenever you're doing PRs, always make sure to try out the feature first. Sometimes that's going to require that you check out to that branch and then try it on your local computer. Sometimes things are going to be in staging. Either way, it's very important that you try things out. Of course, I'm being very idealistic right now. There will be times when you will not have the time. Somebody will just have to, you will just need to approve something, but we will talk about that soon. So essentially, yeah, use videos. They save a lot of time. They bring a lot of clarity. They bring a lot of, they reduce the amount of time needed for those reviews, because you can tangibly see, you can hear the person explaining the code. Sometimes you can just click record, go to your Vim, VS Code, Emacs, whatever, just record your screen, copy the link, share with your colleagues, and you're done. And then pair programming for collaboration. Of course, code reviews are never ideal, and not all of them are primitive or simple. Sometimes there will be features that you weren't able to break down into smaller chunks. Sometimes there will be those gigantic, 2,000 lines of code PRs that nobody can truly review, because nobody reviews 2,000 lines of code. This is an opportunity for you and your team to sit together, either in a pair programming session or a workshop, and go through things together. Even if it takes a couple of hours, it's probably worth it, because the feature is big enough to justify that. So in simple words, I would say comments for very simple things, videos and pair programming for more complicated things. All right, let's move on. So code review pitfalls. We already mentioned some of this, but let's go. So large PRs are one of the biggest enemies of code reviews. When you push 3,000 lines of code, 2,000 lines of code, 500 lines of code sometimes, that's very difficult to review. There are even memes in programming community. It's like, I push a 20 lines commit, somebody leaves 10 comments on it. I push 2,000 lines of code, there's one comment, right? So you get what I mean. You can see how overwhelming it is when you push such a huge PR. It's incredibly overwhelming for people to even get started. So that's why there's this paradox here that I just described. When you push something small, people will find various things that they want to discuss or have a comment on. But when you push 2,000 lines of code, people will just give up, because they will open up 200 files, and that's not manageable. So large PRs, failure to break down tasks. Failure to break down tasks is one of the probably skills that developers lack the most. I think that task management and product management as well, we are not really good at. So I'm not going to talk about this. Maybe that's a subject for a different video. But those two are huge enemies of code reviews. Now, some of the other aspects of it, lack of context. So you are reviewing something that you didn't put any effort, for the time being to understand it. So your colleague has been working on something for 2 weeks. You didn't even care to know what he or she is working on, because you've been in your own world. So now somebody adds you for a PR, and you're supposed to review something, but you don't know what it is. You don't know the feature. You don't know what the feature is supposed to do. So that's on you, right? It's you depriving yourself of knowledge. And you should not do that. Lack of domain knowledge, you maybe just joined the company, you don't know the product yet, you might be in finance or medicine or IT, software, whatever you are, you don't know the context, somebody created a large PR, you don't know, maybe they're building D3 plots and you have no idea about the data or where the data coming from, right? So this is also one of the times when you will be kind of lacking a bit on code reviews. If no issue is approved, so keep in mind that code reviews are not, they're not a must. You don't have to leave a comment every single time. If you don't have a comment, if things look good, approve it. You don't have to agree with everything. Code reviews are not made so everybody agrees with everything. That's impossible. If you have 2 people, they will disagree. If you have 5 people, it's impossible. Focus on functionality. Your core principle here would be, is the feature that's being released first and foremost delivering the functionality that that PR is about, right? So that should be your core principle when you're approaching those. If so, you can then say, okay, everything works. You can throw a few comments here and there just as an opinion, not as a must. So don't request those changes. Just say, hey, I would do this like this. So be a kind individual, show some empathy, and be careful how you talk. And then being absolute person, absolutist exception will happen. Everything that I said so far, in most cases applies. There will be exceptions when something broke on Friday, you have to push things, you have to even log into some developer account. We have one in the current company and approve it yourself. Sometimes you will have to close an eye and just do it. So there will be exceptions, especially in startups. Things are not going to be ideal, but of course, just because there are exceptions, we have to still try to make as least amount of those as possible, right? All right, great. Before you request a pull request, this is very important, incredibly important. So first and foremost, you have to review your own code. There's nothing more disrespectful that you're just like, okay, I have something, let me just commit it and push it, and then my colleagues, they will be fixing my code. You know, I will be using their time to patch up for my own lack of discipline, my own lack of care, my own lack of respect, right? So before you push your code, make sure that you review it yourself. Push it to GitHub if you're using GitHub, create a draft, even review it yourself in this kind of parallel view, right? In this column type of view. Don't leave, silly things there so people are wasting their time. Leave, oh, can you please remove a console log or a print statement? Oh, you forgot to import this. Those types of things shouldn't really happen. Tooling can also help you for these things to not happen. So for example, you can create rules where your Husky will fail, your pre-commit hook will fail if you have a console log, if you have any types of errors. So try, as I said in the point 1, try to minimize this as much as possible, right? And as I just said, be respectful of other people's time. There's nothing worse than not respecting other people's time, other developers' time. Key takeaways to round up. Keep reviews focused and insightful. So try to learn from them. Try to share knowledge, especially with juniors. Try to teach people. Try to learn from them. Be open-minded. Be kind. Code reviews are there to help you and your team to be better, to get along better. They're not there to compete, to trash others, to show you how great you are. If you're truly great, you will uplift others, you will help others, you will not put others down. Even if you have to show a bit of seniority sometimes, do that in a kind way. Choose your words wisely, because we never know how we impact others deep inside, because we are all different. And some of these words can affect others more than you think. So be kind, be humble, show some empathy. Automate what can be automated. So don't do things where tools are a million times better, more effective. They will save you a lot of time. Formatting, linting, nothing should ever be really committed to a remote repository. Nothing should really leave your computer if it would fail in your CI. So if something that's failing in the CI is leaving your local development, you're doing something wrong. So you have to sync those two developments. They should be identical. If you can't do it properly, use Docker for development as well. Either way, if you are able to push something to a remote branch, no matter what the branch is, master or some feature branch, that means that code at the very least checks on testing, linting, and formatting. Then when you isolate those things, then your code reviews are going to be a lot shorter. Prioritize learning and collaboration. That's what we already spoke about. Simplify reviews, small PRs if possible. Again, sometimes as developers, we will desperately fail with this because we're not great at these things. So sure, but at least try. Align on coding standards, as I said, write some documents, set up tools, so make sure that this stuff is agreed upon, and whenever there's a discussion, disagreement, point to the document and say, look, we already agreed on this. Do not discuss the same things all over again, and especially when it comes to onboarding, new people who come, you can review these documents with them, make sure that they at least agree on this to a certain point. You can if you're a tech lead, a CTO, you can make them a little bit happy, maybe change something just to satisfy them, but not everybody will be happy with everything. That's impossible. And that's where you have to show some seniority, understanding, and empathy. Focus on big picture, meaning understand what your colleagues are doing, be in the context, be involved, understand what features that they're building are supposed to do, what is the value that they're supposed to provide for your customers. Try to check staging, try to check out to those branches on your local computer, click around, see if things work, because at the end of the day, when this gets out to the customers, that's really all that matters. And lastly, review your own code before submission so you don't waste other people's time. Show some respect, professionality, and people will show that back to you. I think that's it. I think one of the most important things to round up when it comes to PRs is being kind, being humble, being very cautious how you talk about someone else's work, someone else's code. You have to be mature. You have to understand that a lot of code has been written in different contexts at different times with different amount of people, with different time, with different circumstances. So try to never ever allow yourself to point at some code, calling it bad, trash on it and stuff, because that's not professional, because you will set up a specific picture about yourself. Nobody will want to talk to you. Everybody will be reluctant even asking you a question because such behavior isn't cool. Well, that's it. I hope you guys learned something new. I enjoy talking about these things. I try to share genuinely everything from my personal experience. I think this is a very important process. This is a very important thing in engineering teams, because you have to do your best to make code reviews friendly, open, so not make them feel like a chore, like a burden. Make it something where people feel fine, pushing their code, getting feedback, learning. And of course, each one of us as individuals, we have to be kind, we have to be humble, and try to remove our ego as much as possible, so we are actually better engineers and we have more understanding about others. That's it for now, guys. I wish you best. I'll see you in another one, and have a great one. Peace out, Alex. Cheers. Bye-bye.